Hello, everyone, and happy Sunday, and thanks for joining us at Yerbba for our first live stream. I'm Dr. Jennifer Griggs. I'm a medical oncologist, and today we're going to be talking about how to cope not only with the diagnosis of breast cancer, but also with the treatment of breast cancer. Treatment for breast cancer can be so complicated. So, what I'll do is I'm going to start with the topic, and then we'll pause and take questions from you. So the first thing I thought I would talk about is the impact of a diagnosis on your identity. You spend most of your life as a person. You have so many roles. You're a friend, you're a daughter, you might be a sister, you might be a brother, you're a friend, you have your role at work and in your community. And the minute you're diagnosed with something serious like breast cancer, you become a patient. And we often in medicine, although we're really working hard to use person first language, we often call people by their diagnosis. So you might become a breast cancer patient. You might even find yourself describing yourself as a breast cancer patient. What that does is it puts the breast cancer first and then you after that. So there are some situations where your diagnosis is important to forefront, but with cancer, which is an acquired diagnosis, not something that makes you a better person or a unique person, it just is something that happened in your life that's very disruptive. We really try to talk about a person with breast cancer, a woman with breast cancer, a man with breast cancer, or most generally, a person with breast cancer. I'm curious if this has happened to you. I also know that people will say, I am stage 2, or I am estrogen receptor positive, or I am HER2 positive. And really, it's the tumor that's all those things, right? The tumor is stage 2 or stage 1. The tumor is estrogen receptor positive or HER2 positive. So it's really important, at least from my point of view, and the years I've taken care of people with breast cancer, to remember that you are not your cancer. Now, some people don't even like talking about my cancer. They will say the cancer. And some people, it's important for them to say, this is my cancer. This is my journey, my treatment. Some people even use war-like language. This is my battle with my breast cancer. But if you're somebody who doesn't want to call it your own and just call it it's important to know that that's okay too. One thing I would really encourage you to do is remember that having a breast cancer diagnosis doesn't change the essence of you. It may change your life experience, it may change your relationships, it may change how you view your future, sometimes in a different and scary way, and other times for the better. I've had patients say that having cancer clarified things for them. They were able to leave a difficult relationship or leave a job they didn't want, or different things became important to them. But I just want to encourage you, based on what I've learned from my patients, not to have your identity completely subsumed by breast cancer and its treatment. Now, why might this happen? Well, it's because it does occupy a lot of your time when you're first diagnosed. It feels like your whole world revolves around the diagnosis. You are sent from doctor to doctor, from office to office. You're waiting on phone to talk with a receptionist. You're waiting to hear back from a doctor. You're waiting on a report, pathology report. It really does, this diagnosis and its treatment, occupy a lot of your time, energy, space. You have very little control. So that's one way in which it's very easy to see how a breast cancer diagnosis can really affect your identity. The other way it can affect your identity is because of how other people view you. So if you've been diagnosed with breast cancer, you may have had other people tell you, well, let me tell you about my friend, family member, acquaintance, coworker, my vet's mother who had breast cancer, and then they share that person's story as if it's what's going to happen to you. You already have a lot going on. You don't really need to hear all these stories from the cashier at the grocery store or the total stranger, but people's mind automatically goes to the last person they knew who had breast cancer or the person with the most difficult time. So people already see you through this filter of their experience with breast cancer. And that can change not only how you see yourself, but how others see you. And we often see ourselves reflected through other people. So those are two ways in which your identity as a person who happens to have breast cancer can overlap with your own identity, all those other parts of you. Now, I do want to say that there are people who've been diagnosed with breast cancer where they welcome that identity. Their wardrobe becomes pink. They, their main social circle is with other people who've had cancer. They actually find meaning in the diagnosis and the treatment. It gives them a reason to show up to different groups, to go for walks and do fundraising or advocacy. There's nothing wrong with making breast cancer a big part of your identity. It's just my encouragement to remember you have those other parts. So I'd love to know if you have any comments or questions. I can pause for a moment, and then I thought I might switch to another topic. All right, well, hearing none, you can always go back to that topic and put a comment or question in. I thought the next thing I would talk about are some strategies for coping. Now, coping is a funny word. Nobody actually really knows what coping means. We talk about it, but it's been under conceptualized. We don't have a real concept of what coping is. So I'm going to take a moment and talk about what I mean by coping. What I mean by coping is managing your thoughts, emotions, not controlling, but managing your emotions, your thoughts, and acting in a way that helps you get through something challenging or disruptive. So I'll start with some things that you can do for yourself. Then I'll talk about what you can ask other people to do with and for you. So, things that you can do for yourself are to spend time thinking about what stories you're telling yourself in your head. So, it's very common, especially in the middle of the night, to have worries over which we ruminate. And that means just chewing things over and over again. And when we ruminate, the same part of the brain lights up as if that event is actually happening. So, finding ways to cut that cycle of rumination is really helpful. I'm going to share with you some things I've learned from my patients that I've recommended to patients and that they've told me are helpful. One of the first things you can do is write or draw what it is you're thinking and feeling. So, if you are feeling very dark and scared, you can scribble in black all over a page. Or you can write over and over again, I'm really scared, I'm really scared, I'm really angry, I'm so confused. You just write out your feelings. You pour them out. You can do this in drawing, or you can do it in writing, or you can record on your phone how you're feeling. And I'm imagining you, when everybody else is asleep, the house is quiet, or perhaps you live on your own and it's too late to call your friends, or your friends aren't calling you back. You can't get hold of the physician and you feel so powerless. You can write, I feel powerless. And it's been shown that writing about stressful events lowers inflammation in people with asthma and people with rheumatoid arthritis. It would make sense since we know that cancer is an inflammatory condition. Did you know that? That reducing inflammation by writing in a journal can be helpful. Now, you don't have to have a special book. You can use scraps of paper. You can use your phone. There's something really great about putting pen or pencil to paper It actually helps us process more. So if you're trying to decide, do I want to do this on my phone or a computer versus writing, I would say try writing it first. There's some people who have difficulty with dexterity in writing. That's okay, use the computer. But writing out what you're feeling, and you can even ask yourself questions. Why am I feeling that way? Then answer it. What story am I telling myself? And answer that. What am I most afraid of? And answer that. And then a really important one is, what do I need right now? And answer that. And get really still and quiet. It's hard to find quiet in this world, but if you can go to a quiet place in your house or a coffee shop or outside and write, that can really help you get still and almost meditative with your journaling. Speaking of meditative, mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation are other things that even if you've tried before and it hasn't worked, you can try now. Meditating lowers our heart rate, lowers the stress in our body, and you can start very small. You can start with 2 minutes of meditation. There are apps with free meditations you can use. You can put a question in the comment if you in the chat if you want a recommendation. And the key thing is when we meditate, we don't actually empty the mind. That's a myth about meditation, that we have to empty the mind. So all you need to do is be aware of your thoughts and non-judgmentally observe them. So you might, while you're meditating, notice your thoughts and notice that you're thinking. So you just say thinking in your mind, or worry, or planning, or scared. You just label the thoughts in a non-judgmental way. This is another way to get really quiet. Another thing that really helps people, things that you can do, are to engage in some sort of movement. If you watched our other videos, you know I don't say exercise because a lot of people don't like to exercise. So we talk about movement. That could be stretching, that could be going for a walk. Even if you're tired, these things will improve your energy level. There are not a lot of things that improve energy other than exercise or movement. So especially if you can get outside, even if it's a cloudy day, there's more light in a cloudy outdoors than in a brightly lit room like the room I'm in right now. So some sort of movement can be really helpful. And again, if you're not used to moving a lot, you can start small. And there's really no limit to how much you can move. I do recommend that you stop short of total exhaustion because that can catch up to you, especially if you're undergoing treatment, you've had surgery, you're getting chemotherapy or radiation therapy. Those sorts of things can make us fatigued. So don't go to 100% of exertion. Stop a little bit, see how you do, and then you can do a little bit more the next day. There's no precaution, there's no caution against movement. The exception would be moving the upper arm that had the side of the surgery. If you've had surgery, you want to make sure you have clearance to start moving the surgery side in a way that's more natural. You don't want to baby the arm, but if you have a fresh incision, you don't want to be moving too much. Just wait till your medical team tells you it's okay to move that arm. So we've talked about writing or drawing. We've talked about recording yourself. We've talked about meditation. We've talked about movement. Other things that help people are to make sure you're focusing on getting enough sleep. When we are sleep deprived, as you probably know, it's easy for people to stand on our last nerve, whether it's the receptionist or a friend or somebody who loves us and means really well. We can become impatient with ourselves. Sleep is really important for decision making. So do everything you can to honor your sleep cycle. I do recommend that you limit afternoon or morning naps to less than half an hour so you don't disrupt your sleep at night. So if you're somebody I can nap for 4 hours, try to avoid that because then it makes it hard to fall asleep or stay asleep through the night. But making sure you're getting enough rest is important. Making sure that you're eating a balanced diet. So lots of color in your diet, fruits and vegetables, even frozen fruits and vegetables have lots of vitamins, and they can help counteract and help give you natural sources of vitamins, which are always the best. I also recommend when you're coping with breast cancer and its treatment to avoid alcohol. Alcohol can be the first thing we want to reach for if we're used to having a glass of wine or another drink to help us relax. But turning to alcohol or continuing to use alcohol for coping actually diminishes your coping strategies. That's been shown pretty consistently. If you need to relax, maybe instead go for a walk or meditate or take a short nap or talk with somebody or write. So I do recommend that you avoid alcohol. I also recommend that you avoid stimulants, including cigarettes. There are lots of reasons to avoid both alcohol and cigarettes, but in terms of coping, it's easy to want to reach for a cigarette if you're a smoker, and I certainly understand that. I encourage my patients to quit because healing is faster if you're not a smoker. Reconstruction healing is faster if you're not a smoker. Chemo actually works better if you don't smoke, and you lower the risks of complications of chemotherapy and endocrine therapy if you don't smoke. This might sound like a really hard time to quit, but this is one way you can take care of yourself, and you can start by going down on the number of cigarettes. Try to get down to 4 a day at the most. That's the level where your addiction needs are met. And then partner with your medical team to see if you can get some help with quitting. So I've talked about a lot of things you can do, a couple things you shouldn't do, and I'd love to take any questions now if you want to pop those in the chat box. All right, hearing no questions, I am going to talk about how you can work with other people to help you cope or manage during breast cancer and its treatment. It's very common that people who are natural fixers, you might be one yourself. I have to fight my fixing instinct. Other people want to fix things. And so what that means is they give a lot of advice. They tell you how you should feel. They tell you how you should react. They comment on your treatment decisions. They might question what you've done. They might ask you why you got breast cancer. And remember, we don't know. In many cases, they're acting out of their own fear that they might get breast cancer, because everybody is at risk for pretty much any cancer. So when people hear you've been diagnosed, it's unfortunate and also natural that they think about themselves, how this impacts them. This is especially true for family members, whether it's your parent, your children, your siblings. And it makes sense because we know that there are familial and genetic cases of breast cancer. That's not what you need right now. You may find, however, that it's helpful to acknowledge that they may be concerned about that, and you can talk with your medical team about how likely it is you have an inherited mutation, and take a look at your family history with your doctor to see if other family members should start screening early, etc. So I just want to say people are not always skilled at helping you cope. So they may actually do things that cause harm. They may tell you you're lucky that it's breast cancer and not another cancer, and tell you about somebody with a cancer with a poor prognosis. You may hear other people with breast cancer saying, well, you're lucky because your lymph nodes were negative, or you only had 3 lymph nodes positive and I had 5 lymph nodes positive. It sounds competitive, but these sorts of comparisons are really natural. They're not helpful. They're not necessarily meant to be helpful. So that's a little different from the well-meaning person who wants to fix you and fix the situation out of their own anxiety. That competition is something that you may hear, and I actually think you're very likely to hear. And this is where getting in touch with what you're feeling and taking a moment to pause, put your hands on your abdomen, take a couple deep breaths. This is where meditation and practicing meditation every day, even 2 minutes a day, and then working up, can help you be less reactive and more responsive when people say unskilled things. It's very likely that they won't understand that what they did was harmful. So, this is where you find other people you can talk to who can say that wasn't very skilled. And I'm telling you right now, when people say things like that, it is not a skillful response. That's just the way it is. They're perhaps doing the best they can, and perhaps they could have done better. Like most of us, we're all doing the best we can. It's also possible that some of your friends may ghost you, not be in contact with you. That's almost always fear. And it's a fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of not knowing what to say, and then fear that they might also be in your shoes one day. And if they already have had cancer, they may actually fear a recurrence. We know that when somebody is diagnosed in our circle, somebody we know, or celebrity is diagnosed with cancer, it triggers fears of recurrence in other people. So not only anniversaries can trigger a fear and anniversary of your diagnosis, but hearing of somebody else being diagnosed. And so you may find that people withdraw from you, and that can be ever so hurtful. A lot of you have written on our other videos that your best friend just disappeared, never to come back again. Your neighbor wouldn't talk to you, and this hurts so much. So how do you cope with this? Since this is all about coping today, how do you manage this? The first thing is to acknowledge how you feel. You might feel angry, but also let yourself feel sad. You might feel sad, and you also might be angry and scared. So we'll focus on one emotion, but it's important to consider all the emotions. You might even feel shame. Somebody abandons you. One of the first feelings we have is shame. We don't even talk about shame, but shame says, I am a mistake. There's something wrong with me. I'm not worthy, which is different from guilt, which is I did something wrong. So shame is, I am something wrong. There's something wrong with me. I'm not worthy. I don't have value. And when people abandon us, don't understand us, don't make us feel safe, that can lead to shame, which is surprising when you've actually done nothing wrong. But that's a feeling that can come up that I call the emotional third rail, because nobody talks about it. And shame thrives in darkness. So the first thing when you have somebody abandon you or say something hurtful is identify your feelings, all of them. Shock, disgust, fear, anger, grief, surprise, and shame. Those are the most common ones. And then figure out what you need in that moment that doesn't require anything from another person. So true universal needs are things that don't require somebody to do something else. So your first instinct might be, I need them to call me back. Or it might be, I need them to care about me. Those are things that require another person to change. The needs I'm talking about are the needs for love, belonging, understanding, recognition, comfort, agency or control. And then you can ask yourself, what strategy can I use to meet that need? If I don't feel I belong in this community, where can I find a place where I do belong? If this person can't comfort me and the need I have is comfort, where can I go to find comfort? You can make a list of all the people you know who will be there for you. You can talk with your medical team and get a referral to a support group. You can talk to the social worker. The social worker will not say things like, you're lucky you only had one positive node. So skilled medical providers who are used to working with people who have had cancer are much more capable of connecting you with people who can help. You have other communities, whether it's a religious or spiritual community, another place where you belong. If you can't find a place where you belong, don't give up looking. Remember, that's your need. Your need is comfort. These are universal needs, and there's nothing wrong with having these needs. Similarly, it might be helpful to wonder what need the person who hurt you had. Not to say that it's okay, but because when you understand the need, you can see, oh, that wasn't a skillful strategy for them to meet that need. Let's say they wanted reassurance. And so they said something unskillful to you or about you behind your back, something that seemed very centered on them. That's a universal need they had. They did not need it in a skillful way. So recognizing your feelings, identifying the need, thinking about strategies to meet the need that don't involve the person who hurt you. Because we can't make people apologize. We can't make people understand us. And you putting your energy into people that have hurt you takes energy away from the people who are good for you and taking care of your own self. I hope that's helpful. I'm going to see if there are any questions and pause right here before I move on to the next topic. All right, not hearing any. I'm going to move on and talk about changing roles after you've been diagnosed with breast cancer and are going through its treatment, and even afterwards, when all the treatment's done and you're in what we often call active survivorship. So let's talk about changing roles. I mentioned at the top of the hour that you are a mother, perhaps a sister, a father, a brother, a daughter, a coworker. You are a friend. You have so many roles. You might be a community leader. You might be a boss. You have so many different roles. One of the things we hear a lot in our comments and on our website is that people are used to being the caretaker, whether it's of their children, their colleagues, their parents, their friends. They identify as a caretaker. This we see a lot with medical professionals, people who are nurses, doctors, pharmacists. They're used to being caretakers. They actually went into their field to take care of other people. And all of a sudden, we can't be that caretaker. How do we cope with that? First of all, it's important, again, to recognize it and recognize the impact it has on you, that there's grief, perhaps shame, because you're not serving in the role that you're used to. There's a loss of your identity. We talked about identity at the top of the hour. If you're watching this on replay, I want to encourage you to check that out. We have all these other roles, and those roles change. We may not be able to make meals for our family, and if we are the family cook and we can't do it because we're tired or the food doesn't taste good or it smells bad or we're nauseated, it's impossible for us to serve in that role. If you're the person who heads up the PTO for your kids' school and your medical team has said, can you kind of peel back? You're undergoing multi-modality treatment. Now you're giving up a role that may have meant a lot to you. Being the PTO president is a big role for you. If you're a teacher and your medical team has recommended that you not work during treatment, you're not doing your job function the way you used to. Being able to recognize that's a loss, as much of the loss of a breast or the loss of your hair or the loss of perceived immortality. Role functions are something we grieve. And it's really important to grieve that. Grieve the hope you had of running the PTO bazaar, or grieve the hope that you had of that promotion, because you are just not up for it right now to put your hat in for that promotion, that opportunity. It's really important to grieve. It's also important to be angry. Whatever feelings you have, this is sounding repetitive, I know, but role functions and loss of role functions need to be grieved, and we have other feelings as well. We might be envious of the person that got the role, or envious of the person who's taking our position on the board. So recognizing that. And then the third key thing is to have hope. Hope that you will have other opportunities. Hope that your role functions will return. Hope is different from a wish. Hope is a belief in something that will happen that also indicates some action. So you might want to think about what actions can I take to make that hope come true? So if you step away from the PTO board, I'm going to use that example because it works for me. Step away from that, talk with the board about when you'd like to return. or plan for the following year. If you had to cancel something that was important to you at work or with your family, start planning or know that you will plan for that when you're done. You need to maintain your hope, even if you feel like garbage when you're undergoing multiple types of treatment, chemotherapy, radiation, endocrine therapy. You need to have hope that you will be able to resume those role functions. I'm going to stop and answer a question. Somebody asked, how do we get motivated to move? That's really hard, isn't it? When you're really tired. There are a few things that come to mind for me. One is find somebody who's a friend who can encourage you. Now, this is a fine line, right? You don't want them to bully you, or when you really feel like garbage, to say, come on, let's go. But if you have a partner or a child, somebody in your neighborhood, people who say, what can I do to help you? And they often bring over a lot of food that you don't feel like eating, that gets stuffed in your freezer. You can ask them to come over and call first, see if you'd like to go for a walk. And having another person, a buddy, so you're not doing it alone, can increase your motivation. The other thing I want to encourage you to do is start really, really small. So when you look at the literature and the science on building habits, there are tiny habits, mini habits, and atomic habits. And all of these start with the smallest thing you can picture. So if you have not been moving at all, what I want to do is encourage you to just walk around the house and set a timer and do it for 10 minutes, or walk outside for 10 minutes. Start really small. And then this is the key. I want you to celebrate. However you need to celebrate, you can create a set of little circles on a piece of paper and fill those in every time you go for a walk. Every day you go for a walk. You may have heard of don't break the chain. So if you want to move every day, it doesn't matter for how long, you can download images of don't break the chain, or you can tick it off in your calendar, or there are apps on your phone. The other way you can celebrate is just by saying whatever you say when you throw a piece of paper into a garbage basket. I say swoosh. So if I take up a piece of paper and crumple it and throw it in a garbage can and it makes it, I say swoosh. And that's the way I celebrate. So if I'm trying to increase my motivation for doing something, I make it as small as I can, the lightest thing I can, and then I make sure to celebrate. We don't celebrate enough in our culture, and it's really important to celebrate. And this is where a buddy might come in, or an app, some kind of visual cue. You can have a wall calendar and just put an X every day you move. If you want to motivate yourself to move more and push yourself to do a little bit more, I want you to, after you move, reflect, how do I feel? How do I feel right now? Most of the time, we feel better. Even if we're a little sore or stiff, we feel better. We feel proud. We celebrate it. So write down, and you can coach yourself on this. You can write down, when I move for a blank amount of time, I feel better. And then find words you can write down that you can look at the next day that will remind you that you felt better. So just get started for 5 minutes. Oftentimes when I coach people in the move, I say, plan on exercising for 5 minutes. Almost everybody can do that. Once you're doing that, you tend to go longer than that. You don't have to, but you tend to. Somebody wrote, I feel less able to deal with stress when I went back to work. Is that common? Absolutely. We use the word trauma a lot, but I do want to acknowledge that breast cancer is traumatic. It's something that interrupts your life trajectory. It's not just stress, it's trauma. And that's not the case for everybody. And trauma is overused as a word and a concept in many settings. But really, very few people argue that a breast cancer diagnosis and its treatment are traumatic. When we are experiencing trauma, we're using all of our resources just to be able to get through the day. And then if something pressures us, another person, a deadline, difficulty at work, whether it's with a task or a person, conflict, we have much less to give. We have much less fuel in the tank, if you will, much less sugar in the sugar pot, whatever analogy you want to use. We have less of that. And remember, sleep can get messed up with treatment as well. If you're having hot flashes. There are a lot of things that disrupt sleep. So if you're not sleeping as well and you've not been able to refuel your tank in terms of your resources, of course it's natural you're going to feel more stress. I do want to normalize this. And now I will spend a moment just talking about a couple ways to rebuild your tank. The first I've already mentioned, which is getting enough sleep. We're not focusing on sleep today, but if you're having sleep problems, we do have some videos on our Yerbba channel on YouTube about sleep. And you can talk with your primary care doctor. There are lots of things you can do that don't need medication to help with your sleep. So getting enough sleep is one. The next one is going to sound a little bit like, it's going to sound a little odd, but let me explain it. The next one is to build your reservoir of positive emotions. I want to make a clear distinction between positive thinking and positive emotions. Positive emotions are emotions like hope, gratitude, awe, inspiration, tranquility, amusement, that we can, gratitude, if I didn't mention that, that we can grow every day by making note of last time we felt awe. When did you last feel awe? And try to remember those things on a daily basis. So we don't want to just turn to positive emotions when we're stressed. So you may have been encouraged to keep a gratitude journal. And a couple things about gratitude. This doesn't need to be the kind of gratitude where we say, at least my hair is not on fire. At least I have a home. That is almost a consolation prize, something we do to soothe the loser. And it requires comparison with people less fortunate than us. The kind of gratitude I'm talking about is gratitude for what we have, and especially the people in our lives. And this could be a total stranger. This could be a pet. This could be a spiritual figure. So be careful with gratitude. It's not, at least I have a home, at least something horrible hasn't happened to me, or it always could be worse. That's actually not gratitude. That's a form of comparison that requires somebody else suffer more for us to feel grateful. We want to have our own sustainable gratitude. So gratitude is one. And if you can just think of one thing a day that you're grateful for, somebody who loves you, a stranger who held the door, somebody who did something kind, you can listen to podcasts that have positive messages. My Unsung Hero is a podcast where people talk about acts of goodness, and you might feel gratitude for that. That can also inspire awe. Inspiration, listen to a piece of music or look at some art, go to a gallery with a friend. I know all of these things require doing something, but it's worth putting energy into your positive emotion bank. I think of positive emotions like a reservoir of water. Reservoirs hold energy. In fact, many places generate energy from the reservoir. And that's something you can do to build positive emotions in your life. That can help when we're stressed. And again, you don't just want to, when you're stressed, say, oh, what am I grateful for? You want to build this up daily. So like a meditation habit, you want to build up these positive emotions daily. So stress at work. The other thing you can do is figure out what you need at work. Do you need more quiet? Do you need to work a shorter day? If you have that kind of flexibility, can you return to work 4 days a week for a little while? Your medical team can help fill out paperwork for the Family Medical Leave Act. So what do you need? Do you need some downtime? You may find that you don't want to be around large groups of people, that it's overstimulating. So do that need exercise again. What is it that I need in this moment? And it's not something other people have to do. Like, I need her to understand. A need is, I need serenity. I need peace and quiet. I need comfort. These are my favorite ones. You need acknowledgement for what you've been through. And then think about things you can do actively to help you put more fuel in the tank, more sugar in the sugar pot, to help you get a little more bandwidth at work, a little more endurance to put up with all the stresses that were there before, but now affect you differently. I hope that's helpful. Somebody's written, my husband shows his love and support by doing things, but I'm unable to ask for emotional support as he shuts down. You are not alone. I want you to know that this is very, very common. When we ask our partners for emotional support, sometimes they don't know what that looks like. Or if we're scared, they're scared too. And that can be really hard. You can feel really lonely in your relationship if your partner can't meet your emotional needs. So, first, I want to validate that, acknowledge that, and let you know that you are not alone and there is nothing wrong with you. Being left emotionally alone can trigger shame that I'm not worthy of emotional support, sadness. It can actually evoke disgust. We can be disgusted with somebody because we know we would do that for them if the shoe were on the other foot. So it's very hurtful when people can't do that. And I want to be really honest with you. It's possible that he may not be able to provide emotional support. We expect a lot out of our partners, right? We expect that they're going to be co-parenters and business partners and roommates and romantic partners and our best friends and um, co-investors. We expect so much from our marriages. I think understanding that he's probably really scared and he's also probably unskilled and doesn't know what you need when you say you need emotional support. So if you can think of things that would be really helpful that he could say, know that it will sound good, even if you gave him the line. So, honey, I need to hear that it's okay to be scared. It's okay to be scared. Or if he says, why are you scared? You just repeat it. I need you to tell me it's okay to be scared. I need you to tell me it's okay to be sad. And then when they get it wrong, you just repeat it. It's also worthwhile to ask them if they're scared. How are they feeling? It's also possible your husband could do with talking with somebody himself. Caregivers get so little support in our country when somebody in their family is going through a difficult time. We don't live with extended families. We don't have these enormous networks of cousins and brothers and parents all around us. So he may need to talk with somebody else whose partner has been through this. And this is not him being selfish, it's his tank being run dry. And he needs somebody to be able to talk about being scared because he doesn't want to scare you. So I'm not trying to just sit solely in his shoes, but I think it's worth exploring why he has a hard time doing this. Is it that he's scared, he doesn't know what to say, and how can you get your needs met? Now, if it's not with him, it's possible you need to go elsewhere for emotional support, and that can be disappointing. That can be really hard. Now, another thing that comes to mind is, have there been other times when you've been through difficult things together where he was able to provide emotional support? So think back to a time when you had a struggle with a kid or a parent and he did provide emotional support. If he was able to do that then, he's able to do that now. He just needs a little help. He needs permission. He may need the words. He may need to talk with somebody to be able to be that person for you. I hope this has been helpful. What tips do you have for managing an adult child who is totally against chemotherapy? I see this a lot. It's very common for our kids to tell us what to do and to have very strong opinions. The key word I want to pick up on there is manage. How do I manage? You don't. You just step back and lovingly detach. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, but I'll tell you a story. When I go to my family at Christmas time, I ask myself, how am I going to manage my kids and my parents in the same room? I have young adult daughters, and sometimes their views don't align with my parents. And it occurred to me, I don't actually need to manage. You don't actually need to manage your adult child and their feelings. They're going to have their feelings. Likewise, you have yours. So they should not be managing you, and you don't have to manage them. Release yourself from that. Now, how do you talk to them? How do you listen to them? How do you stay in touch with them if they disagree with a treatment plan you're going to follow? It's important, I think, to tap into your feelings. Are you worried that maybe it's the wrong decision? Who else can you talk to feel more confident? Are you worried they won't support you if you get side effects, or they're going to say, I told you so? If you get side effects, that's something we all fear hearing, right? Your kid probably feared hearing that when they were growing up and you were their parent. So figure out what it is you're worried about and then set some boundaries. We talk about boundaries a lot. Some people don't like the word. So I use the word edges or limits. So you set your edge. And when they say something like, I told you so, I told you not to get chemotherapy, you can say, yes, you did. You were against chemotherapy, and I made a decision for myself based on the information I had that this was the right thing for me to do. So there's an acronym that's really helpful. Don't go deep. Deep is defend, engage, explain, or take it personally. Don't defend, don't explain, don't engage, and don't take it personally. If you can remember those 4 things in conversations with your adult child, it can help you be more detached and stay loving. You can stay connected. Sometimes somebody will say, you're absolutely wrong. This is absolutely the case. You can say, well, maybe it is, instead of defending yourself. So you can say, yes, you told me you weren't keen on chemotherapy. Just leave it there. You don't have to explain it or defend it. So I'm hoping that's a helpful strategy. You can't really manage how other people feel, just like they can't manage how you feel. Great question. This question is, does staging have to do with tumor size or the size of the cancer? So the staging of the cancer depends on 2 things. It depends on the size of the cancer, the tumor, they're the same thing, and the number of lymph nodes that are positive, if any. So stage 1 cancer is a 2-centimeter tumor with negative nodes. You can have stage 2 cancer in a couple different ways. You can have a tumor that's between 2.1 centimeters and 5 centimeters, or 1 to 3 positive nodes. So the size of the tumor matters, the size of the cancer matters, but so does the lymph node status. Stage 3 cancer is a tumor 5 centimeters or more, or 4 or more positive lymph nodes. Stage 4 cancer, you don't even need to know the tumor size. The cancer is in other parts of the body other than the breast and the neighboring lymph nodes. Grade, which I'm going to spend just a minute on, is another thing you'll see on pathology reports. That describes what the tumor looks like under the microscope, how much it looks like normal breast tissue. So grade 1, not stage 1, grade 1 looks a lot like normal breast tissue. Grade 3 looks like very disorganized breast tissue, normal breast tissue, but it's not normal. It's disorganized. The cells are all kind of random, and the size of the nucleus and the cells are all different. And grade 2 is in between. So I've answered a couple questions, one you asked and one you didn't. I'm so pleased that you're putting questions in. Please keep coming with them. Great question. Is there an alternative to taking tamoxifen for 5 years with Lupron Depot every 3 months? I'm aware it's preventative treatment, but 5 years seems too long. Great question. Let me just explain to others who may not know. Tamoxifen is an anti-estrogen. It blocks estrogen in your body from getting to tumor cells. And a Lupron Depot, that's the brand name of a medicine that's given every 3 months to medically suppress the ovaries, so that your body doesn't make estrogen from the ovaries anymore. It makes estrogen in other parts of your body, however, like breast tissue, fat, and the adrenal glands. So that combination of tamoxifen and ovarian suppression with injections has been shown to be very effective in people who still menstruate after chemotherapy or in people who don't get chemotherapy with invasive breast cancer. This is actually a life-saving strategy. The Lupron depot actually only goes for 2 to 3 years. Studies have done it 2 ways. So that doesn't go for the whole 5 years. There's no evidence you need 5 years of ovarian suppression. Tamoxifen has been studied for how long should we give it. And people who take it for 5 years are much more likely not to have their cancer return in other parts of their body than people who take it for shorter periods. We've also studied 5 versus 10 years, and there's no benefit to more than 5. Though if your tumor was high enough risk to get chemotherapy, you may also be offered an aromatase inhibitor. I won't go into that because that wasn't asked. But the answer to your question is, I know it seems like a long time, but it's all coming from data, studies we've done comparing it to shorter durations. But the Lupron depot, the injection, does not need to be given for the full 5 years. If we don't have any other questions, we have a few more minutes. So I thought what I would talk about is how to manage all the information that you get when you're going through breast cancer and its treatment. You get lots of reports, you see lots of different doctors. It's a lot of information. And now, if you're in the US, you can access all that information on your portal. It's required by law that very few things be kept behind a firewall, if you will. You have access to the pathology reports, all your scans, all your doctor's notes. And if you're information hungry, you may find yourself wanting to organize and save all of that. So I thought I'd share with you some tips that my patients have used to help them stay organized. And if you're a person who thinks knowledge is power, this can be a really good way to cope with information overload. So I actually am more of a peeper person. I have 4 computers and many, many files on my computer. But in terms of being organized, I like to have a binder. You can find things more easily when you go to appointments. And I recommend that you get a binder with different sections. The very back section is where you can put all the things that people give you that are completely unrelated to you, but they want to be helpful. So they'll send you things about a cancer you don't have. You can toss them, recycle them, or you can keep them in the back of your binder. This is a way people show love, is by giving you information, something they've read, and you can just file it away. The very first section should have a list of all your doctors, their phone numbers, and how other ways you reach them. So the number to reach them after hours, and you can put their name, the person who works with them, like the nurse practitioner or the physician assistant, and then their where they are, their address, because you're going to need to fill that out for a whole host of things at some point, and then the best phone number and contact information. And you can just add doctors as you see them. So if you see a surgeon first, or a radiologist, radiation oncologist, medical oncologist, plastic surgeon, physical therapist, just put them all on their front sheet. You can also, of course, enter it into your phone, but it's really helpful to have it right there in front of you, including the address. A lot of people will give you their business card, so you can just tape it in there if that's easier. In the next section should be questions to ask the doctor. And you can put those, you can color code them by the type of doctor, or you can just keep a running list of questions to ask the doctor. You may, before each visit, want to organize those questions before you see your medical team, because trying to go through 4 pages of questions can be overwhelming and make you feel a little less in control of that appointment. The next section should be tests that have been done, whether it's pathology tests or scans that have been done. You may also want to have things from your primary care doctor. If you're a diabetic, you might want to have your hemoglobin A1C in there, that sort of thing. Mammography reports, keeping everything together and in reverse chronological order. So the oldest is at the bottom and the most recent is at the top. And then the next section can be your doctor's notes, if you print those out. And you can have those, you can put a marker on the top to color code them. You don't have to do any of these, but it can be really helpful. And then the final thing would be a calendar of your appointments, which you're very likely to keep electronically. but it can be really nice when you go into a physician's office and you see somebody to say, I see this, I see the radiation oncologist on this date. Because for me, that helps me plan when I'm going to see you again. Because I don't want to double up and have you see two doctors in the same week. So going and knowing when your next appointments are can be really helpful. I've covered a lot today. Thanks so much for joining us today and putting your questions in the chat. If you've enjoyed this, we'll do it again, and you can suggest topics that you would like to see. It's been really nice spending this time on Sunday with you. Have a wonderful day.